Snow hammered the abandoned lot in South Chicago when the scream cut through the wind. "Please, don't leave me here," Isabella choked, her lips turning blue as she crawled toward the only light, the taillights of Brandon Ashford's BMW. He looked back once, smirking. "Tell your father this is what happens when his princess embarrasses me." Then the car shot off, leaving her gasping in the -20-degree storm. A pair of trembling hands touched her shoulder. "You're freezing," a soft voice said. Isabella lifted her head and saw Nora Hayes, thin, exhausted, smelling of cold air and factory dust, already unbuttoning the only coat she owned. "No, don't," Isabella whispered. Nora draped it over her anyway. "You matter more than I do." That was the moment everything shifted. Because the girl shivering in the snow belonged to Vincent Moretti, the most feared man in Chicago. And before sunrise, he would learn who saved his daughter, and who tried to kill her. What follows will ignite a storm no one can control. If this story pulls you in, like the video and subscribe to Real Life Stories New for the next chapters. The storm hadn't eased. It struck the abandoned district in sheets of white, swallowing every sound except Isabella's shivering breaths. Nora tightened the coat around her one last time before stepping back into the wind, her thin sweater instantly soaked. She didn't wait for gratitude. She only whispered, "Stay awake, keep your hands moving," and turned away, barefoot on the ice. Her steps were uneven, each one burning as the cold forced itself into her skin. The wind scraped along the empty street, carrying the echo of Isabella's trembling voice. Nora had heard fear many times in her life, but that one felt different. Felt like the sound of a life worth saving. She kept walking, arms crossed for warmth, breath sharp against the night. Her vision dimmed at the edges, but she pushed forward, whispering the same words she had used to survive every darker winter. Just one more block. One more. But she didn't reach the next block. Her legs buckled, and the concrete rushed up to meet her. She didn't feel the impact. Only the cold. Only the silence. Only the fading thought that she hoped the girl made it home. And then nothing. When Isabella burst into the hospital hours later, pale and wrapped in blankets, Vincent Moretti felt something inside him, something he had buried years ago, ignite with a fury that stilled the air around him. He listened to her story without interrupting, without breathing, without blinking. But when she whispered, "Dad, she saved me. She gave me her coat. She walked into the storm with nothing." Vincent's hand closed into a fist so tight Marco thought he'd break bone. "Find her," Vincent ordered. "Boss in this storm. Find her." There were no raised voices, no theatrics, only cold conviction. And that was worse. Marco and the team followed faint footprints, scattered in places where the snow had fallen thick, then clearer near a rusted staircase. Each print grew weaker, smaller, like the steps of someone fighting their own fading strength. When they reached the basement door, Marco pushed it open and saw the shape curled on the mattress. He whispered, "Oh God, she's just a kid." She wasn't, not really. But her small frame made her look like someone who had run out of chances long before winter came. Marco lifted her gently. She didn't stir. "We're taking her to the estate," he said. "To the hospital." "No," the boss said, "home." And for once, "I agree." Nora woke 3 days later to soft light and warmth that didn't feel real. She blinked at the ceiling, then at the unfamiliar room. Cream walls, polished floors, a vase of fresh flowers. She tried to sit up, but pain flashed through her. "Take it slow." He turned. A doctor stood beside her, adjusting her for. "You're safe," the doctor said. "You were found in severe hypothermia. You're lucky to be alive." Nora's breath trembled. The girl, she made it. Before the doctor could answer, the door swung open and Isabella rushed inside. "You saved my life," she said, voice breaking as she hugged Nora. "You saved me." Nora froze, unsure what to do with a gesture so warm it hurt. That's when the room shifted. A presence entered. Quiet, heavy, controlled. Nora turned and saw him. Vincent Moretti. His suit black. His expression unreadable. But his eyes, those gray eyes, held a storm she didn't recognize. "Miss Hayes," he said softly. "You saved my daughter." Nora swallowed. "Anyone would have." "No," he replied. "Only you did." His gaze lowered to her bare feet, wrapped in bandages. His jaw tightened. And in that moment, Nora realized something terrifying. This man did not simply want to thank her. He wanted to repay a debt he considered sacred. The next morning, Vincent called Marco into the study. "Find Brandon Ashford." Marco nodded. "Already in motion." And Marco, no excuses. Marco understood. The storm outside wasn't nearly as brutal as the one simmering inside the man before him. Brandon's laughter at the penthouse party stopped the moment the lights shut off. When they flickered back on, 10 men in black stood around him. No one touched the guests. No one spoke to them. Only Brandon. He was dragged out in silence. Hours later, Vincent stood before him in an empty warehouse. Brandon, shaking in a metal chair, stammered. I didn't know she'd freeze. I just wanted to scare her. Please, I'm sorry." Vincent leaned in, voice calm enough to freeze the concrete beneath them. "You left my daughter to die." Brandon sobbed. "Don't kill me. Please." "I won't," Vincent said. "But I'll make sure you never stand near another woman with the belief you can harm her without consequence." By dawn, Brandon's world was over. His father found him at the door of their mansion, humiliated, stripped of status, reputation destroyed, enrolled in an overseas program for rehabilitation. His political future evaporated in hours. Chicago would remember his name only as a warning. And Vincent Moretti hadn't lifted a finger in violence. Power did the work for him. Meanwhile, Nora struggled to accept the safety given to her. She had never been in a room with heat she didn't have to pay for. Never eaten food she didn't have to ration. Never slept in a bed without worrying whether she'd wake up to someone shouting. Vincent visited that evening, standing at the doorway as if unsure whether he belonged in her space. "I owe you a life," he said quietly. "You risked yours for my daughter. So I'm giving you a chance to rebuild yours." Nora shook her head. "I don't want charity." His eyes softened. "This isn't charity. It's respect." Weeks passed. Nora healed. She started working as Vincent's assistant. She learned how to schedule his meetings, manage his calls, sift through mountains of paperwork. But what unsettled her most was not his world. It was the way he looked at her when she didn't notice. Like she was a reminder of something he thought he had lost long ago. Isabella grew attached to her, visiting her desk after school, asking about books, homework, silly teenage problems. Nora, who had never been anyone's safe place, suddenly became one. And Vincent noticed. He noticed everything. The late-night tea he left on her desk when she worked overtime. The way she apologized too quickly, as if expecting anger that never came. The way she held herself still when someone raised their voice. He never asked about her past. But he knew enough to see pain when it spoke without words. But shadows were moving. The Clove family, hungry, ruthless, expanding, sent eyes toward the Moretti Tower. They watched who came and went. They watched Isabella. They watched Vincent. And then they saw Nora. A woman he protected. A woman he visited at the hospital. A woman whose presence softened the coldest man in Chicago. She became a target before she ever knew she was in danger. The day she slipped out to visit Lily on their mother's anniversary, she had no way of knowing she wasn't alone on the street. A black SUV slowed beside her. 2 men climbed out. A cloth pressed against her face. The world dimmed. When she woke, she was tied to a chair under a single hanging bulb, facing the man who had ordered her taken, Viktor Koslov. "You," he said with a thin smile. "Our leverage." Nora said nothing. Fear stood behind her, but she didn't let it inside. She'd faced worse men before. But she had never seen someone like Vincent when he learned she was gone. Marco had never seen him like that either. The overturned desk. The shattered glass. The silence so violent it cut the room. "Find her," Vincent said. And when we do, no one touches her. No one. Within hours they had a location. Vincent didn't wait for backup. "She's expecting me," he said. Marco whispered. "Boss, this is a trap." Vincent walked out without answering. The warehouse doors blew open as Victor raised his hand to strike her again. Not violently, but enough to prove he held power. He never touched her. A gunshot cracked overhead. Lights snapped off. Shouts erupted. Men scrambled in the dark. When the lights returned, Victor saw him. Vincent stood in the doorway, breathing hard, coat torn, eyes burning. "You took what's mine," he said. Victor backed away. "We can negotiate." "You kidnapped an innocent woman," Vincent said. "There is no negotiation." Victor's terror was immediate and honest. "You'd risk war for her." Vincent stepped forward. "I'd risk everything." The Clove family would remember that night as the moment their expansion into Chicago died. Their alliances crumbled. Their businesses sank. Their men scattered. Not because Vincent killed anyone in that room, but because the city stopped fearing them and remembered who truly held control. Victor Kozlov disappeared from every territory map before sunrise. And Nora. She collapsed into Vincent's arms when he cut her free, whispering, "You came." "I will always come," he answered. Healing wasn't quick. Trauma never was. Nora woke often with memories she couldn't outrun, but every time, Vincent was already sitting by her bed. "You're safe," he'd say, not commanding, not promising, but offering. And slowly, she believed him. Slowly, safety became real. Slowly, so did love. Months later, when Brandon returned to Chicago secretly to reclaim his old status, thinking time had washed away the scandal, he made a mistake. He bragged. In a bar. To the wrong man. About what he had almost done to Isabella. The recording reached Vincent within hours. And this time, mercy wasn't even considered. Brandon lost everything in a single public scandal. His father's political career imploded. His trust fund frozen. His reputation burned beyond repair. His face plastered across news headlines as a symbol of entitlement and cruelty. He became a lesson the city taught its children. Some men are dangerous until they touch the wrong family. His downfall was total and satisfying. The Moretti Tower changed in the months after. Its halls felt different, warmer, brighter. Nora's laugh echoed through them when Isabella told jokes. Lily visited often. Even Marco, usually reserved, smiled more. But the biggest change was Vincent. He no longer looked like a man built from stone. He looked like someone learning how to live again. The night he asked Nora to stay, not as an assistant, not as a debt repaid, but as someone he wanted beside him, she didn't hesitate. "You saved my life," she told him. He shook his head. "No, Nora. You saved mine first." Her smile that night was the first true smile she had given the world in years. And that was the moment the story shifted forever. Because the man who once ruled the city through fear learned what power felt like when it was rooted in love. And the girl who once walked barefoot through a snowstorm finally found a place where she never had to walk alone again. But the real twist. The world hadn't yet seen what Vincent planned for every person who tried to hurt the woman he cared about. And someone else was about to learn that lesson next. The weeks that followed moved quietly, almost gently, as if the city itself understood how much had been broken and rebuilt. Nora walked through each morning with a steadiness she had never owned before. She no longer waited for the floor to collapse beneath her feet. She no longer braced for shadows that once followed her like a second spine. What surprised her most was not safety, but how it changed the way she saw herself. She had spent years believing she was someone the world could overlook, someone meant to endure, not rise. But the truth revealed itself slowly, in the way Isabella smiled when she entered a room, in the way Lily clung to her during their late-night talks, in the quiet respect in Marco's nods, and in Vincent's rare, unguarded expressions when he thought no one was watching. She realized survival had never made her small. It had made her capable. And facing the people who once controlled her story made her understand she had the strength to rewrite it. One evening, as snow drifted past the window, She paused by the framed coat, a symbol of everything she had dared to give when she had nothing. Its patches and worn seams gleamed softly under the lights, a reminder of the moment her life turned. Nora touched the glass lightly and let herself breathe, deeply and fully, knowing the road ahead would finally belong to her. If this story moved you, please like, share, and help Canada's Heartfelt Tales grow by subscribing for more powerful journeys.